So with Halloween just around the corner, there is no greater time than spooky season. And what do I enjoy doing when it comes to this time of the year? I really like going through all of the different horror games that are out there. There are so many different elements when it comes to a horror game. Whether it's a, survival horror, or even zombies, or just something that really scares you. The Xbox 360 is a console that has so many horror games, and there are almost like 50 of them on this system. So these are all games that you need to kick off that spooky holiday season. So first of all, these games, these are some of my all-time favorites. I really wish they did not cancel Left 4 Dead 3 because Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2, something about these games. And I love how you're going through with just one simple task. You have to work your way to the extraction point. Although there are only 4 scenarios in this, there are so many ways to replay this game. The replayability is just unimaginable, and I love going through with different people playing this game. Just a great, perfect co-op game. And I love how you just jump right into this action. It has the simplicity, yet so much fun behind it, because there are tons of weapons, and I just absolutely love this. And as I'm listening for the different types of these boss zombies, it just really gets that intense nature, just this creepy vibe to it, and it's so much fun. Playing this game with the lights out is definitely the way to be.
Just hang on. Let me heal you. That's what I'm talking about.
And that's not all, because these games, we have Condemned Criminal Origins, and we have Condemned 2 Bloodshot. These games I actually stumbled upon back in the day, and I'm so glad. It says Descend into Chaos. These crazy games, just some that a lot of people maybe have not heard about. But the first one, it just was scary. It had these violent tendencies in here. This immersion factor in the game, this first-person perspective. You have these different weapons, this melee combat, just some of my all-time favorite ways to play a game. Bloodshot, you had even more horror. This game was so much better, and you're just battling these demons. There are this whole crime scene investigations, and the combat was very much improved. I actually started with the second one, and I had to go back and play the first game because I had so much fun with these, and just I remember getting, scared throughout the game and just having these crazy times where I just did not expect what was coming next. Now this game, I still am shocked that I scored it at the thrift store, but this is for all of those Suda51 fans. This is a bizarre game. There's just so much going on with it, and it really lives up to this horror, demented, tons of gore, just 70s and 80s horror influences in this game. It's just a really great love letter to that time. I just love all of that stuff, from the 70s and 80s horror movies, just destructive, this third-person shooter, and I love the visuals. The bosses look fantastic in this game. It plays very well, and it's just so much imagination when it comes to these characters or these monsters and everything that you're going up against. It even says brutally demented boss battles. This is one that you have to find, and I'd try and find it for a great deal. And then Silent Hill Homecoming. So many people are fans of the originals in this whole series. This one is a little bit different, and of course there were some mixed reviews with it, but this is a great game. They really expanded with the exploration, just the atmosphere. It's different than the others, but this is very immersive with the enemies, and it's just very interesting, this game. So I'm really glad to have this one into the collection. So this is the perfect time to go back and play this. It even says evil welcomes you back home and battle nightmarish creatures with these, deadly weapons that you get to choose from. Then on to this one. This is another one that I scored a long time ago. We have Clive Barker's Jericho. Now this was a very interesting game at the time, and I actually enjoyed it, and a lot of my friends did too. We actually passed this game back and forth. So even though there are some mixed reviews, I think this game is underrated. I think it's amazing how you get to switch between the characters and you have like this nightmare, these demons. It's just really cool to see like Clive Barker's, whole concept of this particular game and have it like come to life like this. So this is one that you have to look out for. Now, this whole series right here, I've seen these prices go up and come back down a little bit. But Fear, when I first played this game, this one, the second I saw that girl, this was like so scary to me. It just really startled me and I didn't know what to expect because I didn't know that this was going to be like a horror-ish style game, but it more so is a shooter. But this one, the first one, would probably have to be my favorite in this whole franchise. So even though it is more of a shooter, the first one, I just felt like it was more involved. You have these like different shooting mechanics, this supernatural, visions of this girl. It's just haunting when you're playing this. Now, in the second one, this one, it says Fear Alma again. I also have that really cool standee for it. Now, this one, the third one, a lot of people kind of, didn't like this one as much. I felt like that one kind of turned into a little bit more action as opposed to horror. Now, you still have these different characters in here that kind of give it that horror vibe. And then you have Fear Files. So these are standalone expansion packs. So you have Extraction Point and you have Perseus Mandate. So you have two separate Fear units as they go through. And of course, a lot of people, got to play that. And some people could not find these when they first came out. I feel like these were a little bit harder to find and the price skyrocketed on them. So if you can find the entire set, I definitely go for it. Now, this video game, they have Saw 1 and Saw 2. I still have to find the second one, but these are modeled after the movies. So I wouldn't really call Saw like a certain type of horror movie. I would have to say that it's more along the lines of, there's like gory, kind of like just crazy stuff, psychological, as opposed to an actual, jump out scary type of horror. So this is based on the film, and you get to participate in these like games throughout here. So it kind of looks like a movie. You have different puzzles, you have some combat, and the second one follows along with Jigsaw. It looks like the first game, and it could have expanded, I feel like, but it definitely fell flat. So these games, if you really are a part of the movie franchise, you might enjoy that. And of course, some of these get a little bit harder to find for some reasonable deals. So definitely be on the lookout for these. On to these games. Something about these was just so hard to play in the dark. We have Dead Space 2, and Dead Space 3. So these games, this horror game franchise, just something about these was so scary. And I remember playing with some of my friends and we had to, pass the controller back and forth, and it was just something about it. So of course you have these like survival horror games. You have these twists and turns in the first one. Definitely reminds me of like Resident Evil 4. The atmosphere was fantastic. The voice acting was great. And I love how you have like these gore and monsters. Now the second one, they upped it. It was faster. There was more gore. It was even scarier. The upgraded weapons were so much better and the combat was fun. Now the third one was fun, but definitely not as good as the other two in my opinion. I think maybe some of the charm kind of like went down, or maybe I was just, having this hype with the first two games, whereas the third one just did not do it for me. Then we have Metro 2033. Something about this game. This is one that I tried to track down for quite a long time, but I love the awesome presentation, the atmosphere, this nuclear apocalypse. You get to survive deep in the tunnels. It's just a lot of fun and definitely a great game. It says fear the future, so I just love how they were going with this particular title. Now this is one that they try to do something different. We have Rise of Nightmares, and it requires the Kinect sensor. It says death would have been better. So even though this was a little bit choppy and a little bit difficult to navigate, I felt like this was a great game. I felt like the Kinect motion controls were lost on a lot of people, but if they really expanded upon this or just made it a little bit better, because you had to use your body to navigate, and it could be a little bit difficult at times, but you have like these deadly traps, you know, like these blades dropping. So you had to be very mindful of that when you're navigating around. But this was just a fun one, and you know, even though it took me quite a while to like get used to the controls and just moving around like the full motion type of controller, I thought, you know, it was pretty cool for what they were trying. Now onto these two games. We have The Darkness and The Darkness 2. So these two games are just very interesting, very unique. You have this like first person shooter and you have to figure out your powers, you know, this darkness power. So I felt like it was interesting how you had to create those dark areas by shooting the lights out. Now, of course, it could get a little bit tedious, but I felt like it was more deadly in the second one, and you really felt like a monster. So you were definitely honing in on your specific skills, and the great lighting, the environment, just something about this really sets the tone for these like horror months. Like, I just love this time of the year, and something about these games really hone in on that. And of course, Bioshock. This is another, you know, franchise that kind of gives that vibe as well, and these are fantastic games, so you have to play through it. We have Bioshock and Bioshock 2. Just something about the style, these characters, just really like focusing in on this. I absolutely love Bioshock, you know, this first person shooter, this sense of atmosphere, something that they did with this, creating this like horror tones. And of course these characters, something about them just really stick with you. And there is still combat, even though it is deemed as like a first person shooter. So you have, in the second one, you have a little bit more of this improved combat, and it definitely stays with you. So I just enjoy these. So these are some that you have to play, especially if you've missed out on them. Now onto some zombies. Something about Dead Island. I don't know what it was, but playing these games, we have Dead Island and Dead Island Riptide. I had to get the collector's edition, you know, when this game actually came out. Something about zombies and, you know, taking over the world and like this zombie apocalypse, this like never ending, it feels like you're fighting for your life each and every single time. These are perfect. You know, they're fun, they're addictive. You have this like massive island, and it's just so much fun because you have, you know, this great sequel as well. Just better playing with other people and just having a great time. It feels like you have, you know, this intense combat and just so much going on with, you know, the environment behind you and just how they create like this like never ending scene is what it feels like. So I just absolutely love this, and these are some great games. Now that's not all when it comes to the zombie games as well, because these right here, I spent hours playing these. We have Dead Rising and Dead Rising 2. Still have to find another case for that. But this one says chop till you drop. This one was a little bit more, you know, hilarious to me, as you're trying to survive for 72 hours. And it's like never ending zombies. It's just crazy the amount that you have to encounter in here. So you have to survive in a mall for 72 hours. You have like this overtime mode that you get to unlock, this infinite mode. And there's like hundreds of zombies on screen at a time. So there's so many different weapons. And there's just so many different missions that you have to go through. And in the second one, there are like multiple endings and different quests. So pretty much you just continuously kill these zombies and just save, you know, some of the humans that you're trying to help out as well. So it's just a funny, over-the-top, addictive, and just a fun time. Now on to Aliens vs. Predator. So this one is a fun game that you get to play one of 3 different ways. So you could pretty much be hunter, survivor, or prey. So as you're going through in this game, you know, you get to play as the Marine. That one's a lot of fun. Or you can even play as the alien. So you have like the speed, this like hunting style, and then the Predator. It's kind of like this stealth style, but you have different weapons and you have this like melee attacks and everything. So it just kind of depends on which style you enjoy, and just something about these movies and just the atmosphere and everything else. It's just a lot of fun when I play these. And then we have this game, Doom 3. I had to include this one. This game, this whole franchise was one that I absolutely loved on the PC. Here it says, 20th anniversary was from 1993 to 2013. But this says, more gorgeously terrifying than ever. So here, this is Doom 3 BFG edition. So this one is the best looking of Doom of all time. At this particular time, you have this darkness, this lighting that's just really played into it. This whole sound design. You get to manage your ammo and just this exploration. It's very tense when you're playing, but very rewarding. And there's something that I just absolutely connect with when I'm playing this particular franchise, just because I grew up with it. It was terrifying as a kid, and just continuing on with this whole franchise. Now, these two are terrifying as well, and not just because they are super difficult. We have Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2. These two, it says go beyond death. And it even says, prepare to die on here. So these are some of the most challenging games, but some of the most rewarding if you can get through them. So even though it's kind of like this action RPG, it's so punishing in this game. It's definitely not for the timid. And these, monstrous creatures, just this, dark and twisted creatures that they have, this exploration, just very immersive and rewarding as you're going on, but you will continuously die a lot. Now on to Resident Evil. This is another great franchise. A lot of people weren't favorites of these particular games because Resident Evil 4, something about those, games that we just absolutely love. But we have Resident Evil 5. So Resident Evil 5 was definitely different because it had a different environment. It was set in Africa. And it plays a little bit different. There's more action, but you still have this whole Resident Evil kind of style to it in a way. So of course it can be deemed as a horror game. Then you have Resident Evil 6. This one has some terrifying enemies, this new outbreak. So just the whole premise of it is definitely horrifying, but there is tons of action as well. But still, something about this environment I just thought was very interesting. The world is in turmoil. The C virus has spread to epidemic proportions. And then on to this one, we have Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Now, a lot of people just kind of didn't really like this one. They thought it was lacking. But of course, the concept of the multiplayer and this team-based shooter was a little bit different. So, just overall, it's always great to play through the Resident Evil games. Just, go through and continue to see which style you like and which ones are your all-time favorites. Now, this one is XCOM Enemy Unknown. So, it says, from the makers of Civilization comes a game about Civilization's Last Stand. So, of course, a similar little concept that we have here. But we have these, aliens that are invading. This, sense of urgency. This conspiracy, this strategy game, just a remake of a PC classic, and the environments are fantastic in this game. So just all of these kind of have this whole horror vibe. And there are some that I have on other systems I've played, I just don't have them on the Xbox 360. And that's going to be Alice Madness Returns. You'll know that I picked it up on the PlayStation 3. This one has a darker story on Alice in Wonderland. It's definitely reimagined. You have this puzzle platformer with these 2D cutscenes. Definitely an odd game, but playing through this is definitely a must to try and recreate all of this craziness that's going on. And then even the game Deadly Premonition, this survival horror game with these comedic elements, this psychological game and just hilarious side quests. So it's I don't know where to stand on it because it's so much back and forth. But that, of course, really makes these games stand out. Then we have Splatterhouse. This was a franchise that I absolutely loved. And I love it because you have this demonic and you have this like trading humanity for power. These different things where you're going around and just killing everything. The combat is great, and I love the power hits, and I love these like demonic portals that you're going through. It's just tons of blood, tons of gore. You're like ripping heads off, and it's just a great time. Definitely sets you for some of those particular horror movies, so it really helps stay in that whole horror theme. And then we have Limbo. This was an interesting game. It comes in like this triple pack with Trials HD, Limbo, and Splosion Man. So this was a indie horror game, like a 2D puzzle platformer. And the tone of having everything in black and white, that really creates this like creepy atmosphere. And you definitely die a lot. So you get to explore around, and it's more of like this trial and death style game. Now we also have Alone in the Dark. So this one, the soundtrack is amazing in here. You're like fighting demons, the survival horror game. And I just love how fire kills pretty much everything. So it's fun with this whole like paranormal investigator. And I just had a great time with the whole inventory style that they did in this particular game. Definitely a great one to play. Then even on to Murdered Soul Suspect. This was very interesting. You're kind of like this ghost detective, and you have to discover your own killer. So of course you're going through like Salem, Massachusetts, and it's just interesting as you have to solve these different puzzles. So that kind of sets you in like the spooky tone and just everything that you have to do. Now Castlevania Lords of Shadow, that is one that a lot of people kind of had some mixed reviews on as well. So anytime that I think of a Castlevania game, I just think of, you know, these different like vampires and like spooky things. So you pretty much have to save the world from like this evil stuff. You have these breathtaking scenes, this like broken world, zombies, vampires, and it's just a great time. Now this is a game I have been looking for quite some time. This is going to be Vampire Reign. Something about vampires, these night walkers, you know, these like undead horrors. This stealth game, it's just no mercy. It's very difficult. You have to go around and kill the vampires, but it's a little challenging. And this is a game that I'm so excited to hopefully find one day so that I could go through and just play this game. I have been wanting to play it, and it looks fantastic. And then on to Alan Wake. Darkness is the Enemy. You are in this small town. You're a writer. The characters are fantastic, and the sound design creates this particular mood. And in this game, light is used as a tool, and pretty much the graphics establish the tone. So this is another game that is definitely on this list, and you have to check out. Alien Isolation is a much longer game than something that I would probably play, but the pacing definitely builds that tension. Alien, and this like whole terrifying part of it where it's like this gut-wrenching fear, you just hear the aliens. It's so intense, and as you're playing through this game, it like really sets that tone. Now of course, how could I forget about The Evil Within? Just the atmosphere, this like masterpiece of a game with the scary, creepy, atmospheric tones. You know, you have to play through this, and it's so much fun, especially for all of those survival horror fans. So this is definitely a great one to choose. And then another game that I'm excited to hopefully find one day, or find a way to play it, is I Am Alive. So this is like a third-person post-apocalyptic where you get to like explore a wasteland. So just these like crazy horror games, and going through, just having a great time and setting the tone for this spooky season. All of these games, nearing almost 50 games, are some of your must-haves to play, and I want to know, what games did I miss on this list? What are some scary, spooky games that I definitely forgot about, or maybe I have them on like another console instead of the Xbox 360, but I need to know because I'm trying to grow and expand this list and just set the tone for this amazing horror season. So of course, let me know in the comments down below which games you enjoyed and which ones you don't agree with. So of course, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Go ahead and check out all of my other videos and stay tuned for more.